They call it the news. It's meant to inform you. But do you ever really feel informed? Here, we look for the signal in all that static. I'm Caesar, and welcome to Strange Frequency. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Strange Frequency. I'm your host, Caesar. Before we get started, care to guess what's in the mug tonight? I'll give you a hint. My mind has been very scattered and chaotic lately, and I need clarity. Comment in the section below. Now, something strange is happening to the internet. Not slowly, not subtly, but quickly and quietly, and at a massive scale. For most of human history, culture was created by people. Stories, music, art, news, ideas. Everything you read or watched came from human experience, a human perspective, a human observation. But that's beginning to change. Now machines can generate content, entire articles, images, entire videos, entire conversations, and they can do it in seconds, not hours, not days, mere seconds. And when production becomes effortless, what happens? Volume explodes. The internet is beginning to fill up with material that no person ever sat down to write. No journalist researched, no artist created. Just systems generating content continuously. Investigators have already discovered networks of AI-generated websites, hundreds of them, and in some cases, thousands. Articles produced automatically, headlines written by software, images generated instantly. The goal usually isn't the truth. It isn't creative. It isn't insight. The goal is very simple. It's traffic, clicks, ad revenue. Remember incentives. Machines creating content so other machines can distribute it over and over and over and over again. Some analysts have started using a blunt term for this phenomenon: AI slop. Low quality content produced at industrial scale. So we're talking large scale. Not designed to inform people, but designed to occupy space. And think about what that means for the internet. Because for most of its existence, the challenge was finding information. Search engines help people discover knowledge, research, articles, expert voices. But now the challenge may be something entirely different: filtering information, or what we do at Channel 84.5, separating signal from static. So here's what we know. Artificial intelligence can already generate enormous volumes of text, images instantly. Video generation is advancing quickly, and most viewers cannot reliably tell the difference. I've seen countless examples of people that I know that thought a video was real, when if you just paid enough attention, you could separate what was real and what was not. The modern internet may soon contain something new: synthetic culture. Content that was never experienced by a human yet appears human. Machines remixing human knowledge at industrial scale. When content becomes extremely easy to produce, it becomes extremely difficult to filter. Every platform now deals with overwhelming amounts of material. Feeds, search results, social media timelines, and algorithms don't judge. They judge engagement, clicks, watch times, shares, which means the system often promotes what is interesting, not necessarily what is accurate. So step back for a moment, if you will, and let's ask a larger question. What happens to culture when machines begin producing it? Human creativity used to involve friction. Writers struggled with ideas. Gosh, I know I have most of my adult life. Artists experimented, researchers investigated, but machines don't struggle, they generate relentlessly. Which means the internet may eventually contain more machine-generated culture than human. Not because machines are creative, but because machines are efficient at their core. And efficiency tends to win in systems driven by engagement. Again, advertising, clicks, volume. So the challenge facing people today isn't just misinformation, it's discernment, which is becoming more rare to find in people. Learning how to recognize real insight inside a flood of automated content. When information becomes infinite, attention becomes precious. Not every article was written by a journalist. Not every image was captured by a camera. Not every opinion was formed by a person. Sometimes it's just the system generating content for itself. And in a world flooded with synthetic information, the real signal becomes far more valuable, which means the challenge for the modern mind is simple. Learn how to separate signal from static before everything starts sounding just like noise. And if you want to do that more, stay tuned, because that's what we do here at Strange Frequency on channel 84.5. The modern media landscape looks competitive on the surface. Different networks, different anchors, different publications, different headlines. But ownership tells a different story. Behind many of those outlets sits a surprisingly small number of corporations. Over the past several decades, the industry has gone through wave after wave of consolidation. Television stations buying other stations, radio groups merging together, investment firms buying struggling newspapers. Now, at first glance, that looks like normal business evolution. But the result is concentration. Fewer hands, controlling more of the information pipeline, and once information pipelines narrow, influence scales considerably. Researchers studying local television ownership found something very interesting recently. When stations share the same parent company, their content often begins to look very similar. Scripts get shared, segments are reused, editorial direction becomes centralized. Different cities, same narratives. Different anchors, same scripts. Different markets, same framing. And we've all seen the YouTube clips of the news anchors saying the exact same line over different states, over different counties, over different companies. Shit's crazy. Looks like a virus. I digress. Critics argue this creates something subtle but powerful: narrative alignment. Not because every journalist suddenly becomes dishonest, but because editorial priorities start flowing from the same corporate structure. And once priorities centralize, diversity of perspective can begin shrinking even while the number of channels still looks large. The issue becomes more visible when we look at the scale. Some proposed mergers in recent years would allow a single media company to reach a vast majority of American households through local television stations. One ownership structure. Tens of millions of viewers receiving information through pipelines controlled by the same corporate entity. At the same time, local newspapers have been disappearing across the United States. Thousands have closed during the past 2 decades. Entire counties now have no local paper at all. Researchers call these regions news deserts, places where local government, corruption, and civic discussions receive little consistent coverage. So on the one side of the system, ownership concentrates, and then on the other side, local reporting disappears. Here's where the incentives begin revealing themselves. Large media corporations answer to shareholders. Shareholders expect efficiency. Efficiency in media often means fewer reporters, more syndicated content, more centralized productions, more stories that can run across multiple markets with minimal adjustment. That doesn't automatically mean the information is false that's being presented, but it does mean the flow of information becomes standardized. A smaller number of editorial decision makers can shape a larger portion of the public conversation. And once that happens, patterns emerge. Coverage starts clustering, language starts repeating, narratives start arriving pre-aligned. Not always through conspiracy, often through structure. Now, some analysts argue that the greatest influence in media today is not ideology first, it's ownership. Ownership determines incentives. Incentives shape coverage. Coverage shapes perception. And perception shapes the national conversation, which raises the deeper question. If information pipelines are incredibly centralized, how does a viewer evaluate what they are seeing? Not just which outlet they trust, but who owns the outlet, who distributes it, and what pressures shape its direction. Because systems matter. And concentrated systems created concentrated influence. This doesn't mean every newsroom is corrupt. We don't paint with a wide brush, we just view the patterns. Many reporters work hard to uncover real information, but systems shape outcomes, and media is still a system. So when people ask whether the media is biased, the deeper question may be structural. Who controls scale? Who controls distribution? Who controls the economic incentives behind the information stream? Because when ownership consolidates, the signal rarely disappears, but the static around it can grow much louder. And recognizing that structure is often the first step towards separating the two. That's what we know. That's tonight's signal on the corporate media. Welcome back. And for our last segment, this ties into last week's last segment, the shadow people and sleep paralysis, but we're going to expand the lore. So for the next few minutes, we're going to step back from systems and back from institutions and touch on something much older, stories and accounts, and one figure that keeps appearing, the Hat Man. He keeps appearing across different countries, across different decades, and across different witnesses. And that's what people call it, the Hat Man, a shadow figure. Usually tall, usually silent, and always with a wide-brimmed hat. Reports of the Hat Man began appearing in paranormal forums and folklore collections decades ago. But the pattern is strangely consistent. Witnesses often describe waking in the middle of the night to a room that feels very different, feels heavy, quiet. Something's amiss. And standing somewhere nearby, a dark figure, not detailed, not even fully visible, more like a silhouette, but it's the hat. It's that damn hat that always stands out to people. It's got that good brim, and sometimes he can be seen sporting a nice coat. And there's just that overwhelming sense that something's watching. Some researchers connect these sightings to sleep paralysis, as we discussed last week, a condition where the body remains frozen while the mind wakes up. During sleep paralysis, people can experience vivid hallucinations, figures in the room, movement in the darkness. The darkness. They also feel a pressure on their chest. Now, from a medical perspective, this explanation makes sense. The brain is caught between dreaming and waking, and the dream imagery is spilling into the room. So, those actually track. But the strange part is the consistency. When people describe the Hat Man, many of them have never even heard the story before, yet the details still line up. Tall shadow, standing still, often near a doorway or a bed, and almost always wearing the same hat, which raises a question. Why would different people in different places hallucinate the same figure? folklore researchers sometimes suggest something else entirely, that the Hat Man is a modern version of older shadow figure legends, stories about night visitors or watchers or spirits that tend to appear during sleep. Different cultures gave them different names, but the core image remains familiar: a presence in a room, silent, observing, and gone by morning. So, what are people actually seeing? A neurological trick during sleep paralysis? A shared cultural symbol that mind produces under stress? Or something stranger that we simply don't understand yet? There's just no clear answer, just patterns, stories, and thousands of people describing the same figure, standing quietly in the dark, hat brim casting a shadow across a face that no one can see. And maybe that's why the story keeps spreading, because unlike most folklore, this story feels a bit unfinished. People are still reporting it, still describing the same shape, still waking up at night with the feeling they were not alone in the room. Maybe it's sleep, maybe it's psychology, or maybe it's simply one more signal hiding in the noise of the human experience. Either way, the Hat Man remains one of the strangest recurring figures in modern folklore. And like many stories that survive generations, it refuses to disappear completely, which makes it perfect material for late night broadcasts like this. Because sometimes the most interesting signals are the ones people keep seeing long after the lights go out. And that is tonight's strange signal. And that concludes tonight's broadcast. As always, links to the articles used will be in the description below. And if you have anything strange or unexplained, put it in the comments. Please like and subscribe and share this with your friends. Until next time, we'll keep listening for the signal.